So I'm going to tell you why I support Donald Trump, okay? I support Donald Trump because I had a vision. I had a vision. Now I'll tell you the God honest truth. I'm going to tell you the whole truth, but I'm not. I'm not really going to tell you the whole truth because I just can't tell you the whole truth. But trust me that I was not insane, but I wasn't myself either. That's all I'll say. So one day after Yale and Harvard plagiarized me, but before I figured everything out, this was about 2 years after Brent Hayes Edwards of Motown Music published his book based on my outline to the Ford Foundation. So once Henry Louis Gates and Brent Hayes Edwards and Hazel Carby conspired to defraud the Ford Foundation, I didn't know what to do, okay? The Ford Foundation, Harvard, Yale, they had targeted me. They had ruined my reputation by telling people that I was insane while they were profiting from my work. So the thing about being a genius in an unsanctioned body, and this is what I'm saying, the only geniuses allowed are European men, okay? And this is the decision of the propaganda machine, the media. I call it the Nazis. I actually call it the neo-Nazis because I think it's a lot of European supremacist racists that had a really good plan for taking over and actually were given the money and power to do it. So while they were giving scientific advantages to the United States through Operation Paperclip, they were also creating social changes in America that caused a great deal of suffering because they never really left the racial supremacist attitude behind, and neither did their victims. So that was like a pew, pew, double whammy. We've got the anger and the frustration of the victims smashing us and trying to push us into their position, and we've got the smashing of the master race trying to make us all conform to their vision of what the world should look like as a colony of Europe. So when you say things like that and you talk like that, you become a very controversial person among people who understand what you're saying. Now, a lot of people don't understand what I'm even talking about. They say, I don't know. I understand every word she's saying, but the meaning, I don't get the meaning. And I totally get that. Because when I started graduate school, that's how I felt. I felt like, hey, I can understand every single word. I can look every word up in the dictionary, but I know each one of those words has a deep history to it. And it's that history that you're talking about, and it's that history that makes the whole conversation fall apart for me. Okay? So I don't want to do that. I don't want to make the whole conversation fall apart for you. But even though Roland Martin dissed me and doesn't let me listen to his show while he gleans my work, thank you for gleaning my work, though. I want my work out there. That's why I don't charge. I don't charge, and I work as a nonprofit because I want people to grow and to understand and to get the Ivy League education that I got, or the parts of it that count, and the private school education that I got. Because I think it's a very important thing for people to know as more and more people get woke, achieve higher consciousness, achieve a greater sense of personal responsibility, not only for your understanding of the world, but for your control of your own mind and your own behavior in the world and your own image. So getting rid of fake news is going a long way towards helping people define themselves outside of a racial group or a prejudice. Okay? We have a lot of things going on. So before I get way too long in this, let me say this is for Roland Martin. Deconstruction does not mean what you think it means. So you blocked me, but I still get notices of your shows. I've tried to discontinue them, but I still get them. And what I want Roland Martin to know is that deconstruction by itself sounds like it just means to explicate a narrative. But deconstruction means to interrogate the position of the speaker. Deconstruction began in France with Jacques Derrida. And it was sort of a response to the colonies speaking back. When Europe went out into the world with a colonial plan to take over the resources of the world to feed its people in the small, cold winterlands without many resources, when they discovered these great new lands that would keep their people alive, and they developed this idea of being the European Empire, E-M-P-I-R-E, that controls the world, sort of springing from a Greek tradition. So you get the cutoff of Europe, okay? I mean, Egypt. And way before the cutoff of Egypt, you have the Malinke people and their whole story of origin. Is it Soyinka? Well, I can't remember the name of the Mali king, Sundiata. Okay, so even before the Egyptians, you have hero tales. You've got stories of the origin of a people, stories of how leaders are born, and the one that I just named is one from Africa that predates anything in Egypt. Okay, and if you want more about that, read Cheikh Anta Diop, D-I-O-P, and I think it's something about civilization. Anyway, he'll give you the preceding history of Africa, but you sort of see a very sophisticated civilization moving from Africa up to the Nile, and then from there influencing Greek and Roman culture, and then Greek and Roman culture influencing England and their great naval forces and their sense of dominion over the world and their sense of law and order and how to execute law and order, you know, how to send in troops, how to fight, and how to use papers to take over lands and property. Well, okay, all that, I don't know all that stuff. You know, leave that for somebody who really understands all that stuff. I don't totally understand all that stuff. But my point is this. We're at a new era, okay? In the industrial age and the colonial age, Europe came out and did beautiful things in the world by organizing everyone. But somewhere around the time of Jacques Derrida, which would be after World War II, the Europeans started to find out what the colonists thought a lot more than they had before. Okay? Before, their narrative ruled because they'd come in with military force. They didn't understand the languages or the complexity of the culture. So they just told each other that the culture wasn't as sophisticated as theirs. It wasn't as developed as theirs. And they sent that propaganda home so that they would send other colonial agents out to have the same idea. Well, all of this can be learned if you study post-colonialism. And I think everyone should study post-colonialism because it's my most powerful tool for understanding what's going on in the minds of the people that are ruling the world, or actually the people that are losing grip on ruling the world, as more and more people realize that you're choosing your rulers. You're actually choosing them. And yes, they can come and kill you, but they can't kill all of you. I know they can kill enough of you to matter, and no one wants to get killed. God knows. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that when enough people reach a point in their development and evolution where they are capable of self-rule and self-responsibility, the need for leaders will become less and less. And as leaders who had relied upon nothing but the Western concept of hierarchy and not the African concept of achievement-oriented leadership, as you find in the tale of Sundiata. It's very hard to hold the hierarchy up without force and without control over the narrative, over what people are saying, over what the town crier says. Okay, now if you're in England and everybody's on that island and you've got all the tough guys and you've got most of the money from, the Vatican, you can beat everybody up. You can beat the Irish up and take all their stuff and make them grow your cows and eat potatoes and then send them off, to the new world, to scrabble in the dirt here. You can do all that stuff and make them be the cops and still make them be second class, because you're going to keep all that aristocratic British control for yourself, right? Everybody else will be second to that. Let me full stop, okay? Because I know that some people don't understand what I'm talking about. And in order to understand what I'm talking about, you will really have to understand the way that our country actually works. When I was a child, I thought that my vote counted. And then when I was in high school, they made me take government to graduate. And I studied it as much as I could, but the book left me with so many questions like, what is the Electoral College? And I was in a Catholic school that year, and nobody could explain to me what the Electoral College was and why my vote still mattered, okay? Now I'm a fully grown woman, and I find out that whoever is elected president can be absolutely toppled from that leadership position by a bunch of nobodies that no one ever heard of before, who occupy obscure positions beneath the vice president. I mean, all anybody ever really knows is the president and the vice president. If that, they don't know like the Secretary of State. I mean, okay, Hillary Clinton made the Secretary of State job pretty famous, and so did Henry Kissinger. But tell me, how did we get Henry Kissinger to be a statesman when he didn't even speak with an American accent? Is that where things started to go wrong? Is that where the Nazis started to take over? Is that where ghettos and a low level of depressing life became the only fate available to me? Was it Henry Kissinger? I don't know. But it makes me sure that career politicians are bad news. During all of this brouhaha with trying to depose the United States government leadership, there was some talk about people saying, my father's father worked in the government, and his father worked in the government, and I work in the government, and I want my son to work in the government. And it made me think of when I started my career in the 1980s as a computer programmer for First National Bank of Chicago in the trust department. And a guy named Jimmy Alexander worked with me, and he would say, term limits. The only thing that's going to save America is term limits. Well, now I understand exactly what Jimmy's saying now, because you can have whatever president you want. If people have long-term schemes in play that take generations to unfold and become profitable, a change of leadership, a change of power, a change of control of that department becomes a change in the future fate of that family or group. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm saying that when you have multiple generation people in your government, you've got a gang. You've got cronyism. You've got nepotism. You've got royalty. Okay? If you've got a Colin Powell working with a Bush, and you've got another Powell working with a Trump, then that's a stream of control that the American people, that no people in democracy have any awareness of or control over, and decisions being made by private agencies that function in a hub government, a government that's really just a hub. You know, my mother used to throw parties for New Year's Eve. She and her husband, Isaac, they used to love to do the merengue. They were such good dancers. Everyone would stop and watch them, do them. They were just, their bodies looked perfect together, and they were cute, and they knew how to laugh and really just charm it up. They were magnificent. Anyway, my mom used to make this dessert, this appetizer that was a grapefruit. She got the recipe from a magazine like O magazine of the time, like the O magazine of the time. And Mom would get this grapefruit, and she would peel it and color it with food coloring, and then she'd put party toothpicks and pieces of cheese or a little pickle, and that was back when grapefruits were bigger. And she would serve that, have that in different parts of the house, of the party room, to serve as her food. Well, that's how the American government works. You've got a grapefruit in the middle, and then you've got all these sticks where the functions of government actually happen. And all the sticks are holding up cheese, and all the cheese is private agencies that profit from government policies and regulations. So you wonder, how come you're spending more and more and more and getting less and less and less infrastructure, less quality in your schools, less landscaping in your communities, less job development, less training, less youth recreational opportunities, just less of everything, but you're paying more and more and more. Every time you get a little foot up on what you're doing, another fixed expense comes through that you have to pay. And you wonder, why is this happening? How come there's 17 taxes? Where are these taxes going? Well, they're going into the pockets of the private agencies. And that's what the fight in Washington is all about, okay? It's about Donald Trump coming in and saying, let's play The Apprentice instead of having it the way it is. All of you people in Washington, all of you private agencies who have taken the business of the government for granted, let's just open this up to the people and to competition. Let's make this a real democracy instead of a de facto, instead of a democracy just in name, that any group of political thugs and hoodlums can take over at any time. I don't know about you, but if we in America had heard of another country where something happened, like the impeachment of Donald Trump, we would be all up in arms. The New York Times would be touting war. They would be saying that it's our moral obligation to go in and save those innocent Americans from tyranny, from a coup. We don't even know what a coup is. Because before they pulled this stunt, they dumbed us down. They dumbed us down good. And I'm going to tell you more about that in my next episode. So tune in to the next episode of the Business Award shows here on Facebook, the annual Business Award show. So Rain Runningcloud here, tuning out.